Tim and I joke that our politics have sort of moved now so that we have the same politics. Like I've moved towards Tim and he's moved towards me, and so we don't disagree on anything anymore.
That's a bad clip for you on TikTok.
You know what? This is part of it.
When you run for governor in California.
Tim, this is part of it. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Weekly Show podcast. My name is Jon Stewart. I will be your host for this lovely afternoon. It's Wednesday, December 10th. This is the final podcast that we are doing this year. We will be back, I think, in the second week of January. You know, old people need a good time. You know, it used to be when you're younger, you go on vacation. I believe I am going to be convalescing. I believe that is the proper term for ladies and gentlemen over 60 years old who are taking a little bit of a break. But we will be back then. And when we come back, publishing on Wednesdays instead of Thursdays, which I know will make a really, I don't want to say crucial difference in your life, but the impact will be sensational. And we're delighted because it's the wrap-up episode of the year. We're going to do a wrap-up type thing. We're going to grab a couple of our favorite pundit-type individuals and talk to them about how they're viewing about the year in rewind and how they're feeling in terms of optimism for the future. I'm sure it's going to be all rosy, people. That's how we've been living this thing. So let's get to them right away and jump into our year in review episode. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, what would a year-end wrap-up be without two media moguls? Moguls, that's right. You heard me, moguls. I don't throw that word around lightly. I mean it in the sincerest form. Jon Favreau, founder of Crooked Media and host of Pod Save America, and Tim Miller, host of the Bulwark podcast. Gentlemen, welcome.
What's up?
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking time from your media empires.
Yeah, it's upstairs in my house. My kids' room is right over there.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah.
That's the beauty of podcasting. Favreau, by the way, mentioned this earlier. He has to, let me talk about what a sucker this motherfucker is. He has to get in a car and drive to some place of business.
In LA, no less.
Where he breathes shared air.
With others.
Well, it's a progressive outlet, so there are a couple masked. A couple of the people are
there's always two.
Yeah.
There's always two, and you always say, "Oh, are you sick?" And they go, "I don't want to talk." And then you have to move along. Gentlemen, as a year-end in review, let me ask you this. We shall begin with this. I think it's the question of the era. How many years has this year been? Tim, you go first.
I who could say? I don't know. Like on the one hand, I'm like, how is it Christmas? I haven't bought a single present yet. And on the other hand, I feel like every day is a lifetime. And so I don't have a great answer to that, but it's been a slog. I'll tell you that. It's been a slog.
It is a slog. Favreau, how you holding up?
I'm holding up okay. It's been a long year, but it's also been like a long decade. I'm really feeling the fact that we've been dealing with this in some form or fashion since 2015 now, and it sort of feels like that's the only life I know. So,
yeah,
guys, I didn't want to say this. I'm 24.
Really?
Look what this has done to me. Look at this.
You look great.
I look like I sleep in a meat dehydrator, for God's sakes. The fuck?
This is what I've got the Kerry Lake Vaseline on the lens thing to try to help me.
I should smooth that and get some good diffusion that's going on here. As people, so it is the inevitable contradiction. So the rise of your media empires coincides with the sort of attention economy that is occurring. Is it symbiotic? Yeah. At this point, you know, people used to say to me during, the Bush years, I think Larry King said this to me once. George Bush gets reelected. That good for you? You hoping for that? And I was like, no, I have children, Larry. How do you separate sort of your professional engagement and success from that feeling of it is you're having to wade through a turd mine to get there?
Yeah, it's a good question.
We're catching Favreau on a reflective day.
Deep Catholic guilt for me would be. Yeah.
We're having a reflective day with Favreau.
I mean, if if Donald Trump exited the scene tomorrow and our politics returned to some semblance of normalcy, which probably hasn't been normal in my whole life, but some semblance of normalcy.
The 90s.
And our audience went away. Like, I would take that trade easily any day over continuing this shitstorm that we've been in for a decade. So that's that. I think what has propelled me this year more than anything else is just sort of a rage at
Tim is nodding, by the way. When you said what has propelled me is a rage, I just saw a glint of recognition.
I'm usually like the hopeful guy, and I still have some hope, but I'm so fucking angry that we're here and that we're dealing with this and that it's been as bad or worse than we imagined in 2024 and before Donald Trump coming back.
Tim, on the emotion wheel, where are you at with that? A similar kind of rage, the optimism,
a deep abiding rage, and anger, and I don't know. Look, for me though, I also, because this has been our life, because it's been a decade, I've tried to process this as like, this is just a job now. Like, this is our life. Like, this is it. Like, I did everything I could think of to try to convince people in my tiny little way to not vote for this person the first time or the second time or the third time, and I lost 2 out of 3, and we have to deal with the consequences. And so I think I get up, and some days I'm like, it's just the lunch pail, man. It's just like, we got to get up and talk about this shit, and
right.
And I think that's the only way to deal with it, and let the emotions. I said last year when I was thinking about this, how was I going to deal with it emotionally? I was like, I'm only going to get mad and upset about the things that make me really mad and upset. And like, there's a lot of, we'll talk about it on the air, there's a lot of crazy shit that happens that's bad. It's like objectively bad, but like doesn't really affect me emotionally. And I just do, that's healthy, I think. You can't run at 11 all the time. And then when something happens that makes me really upset, I get on here in my little hole. I walk up to my little hole and I get upset with people.
Yell at a scream.
And I scream.
And you allow yourself to do it.
Yeah, people, and I think people want that because they're all screaming at their phones, so we might as well scream together.
Two things from that I find interesting. One is, so, Tim, your frustration, you were coming at it from, the Trump voters were inside the House.
Yeah.
You were coming at it from a more conservative perspective. I think for Jon and I, it always felt like an oppositional place. Our frustration probably went more towards, how can you not, to the Democrats, present a more coherent and thoughtful and affirmative case other than, I think this guy is fucking nuts. Yeah. Doesn't everybody see that? But having that happen, I don't want to throw this to the Mets, but like the Mets recently lost Edwin Diaz to the Dodgers. That's what it feels like to be a Democrat, to be a Mets fan. But you're coming at it. You were on the Dodgers.
Yeah. I don't do baseball metaphors, but I'm going to go with you on that.
It's all I have, Tim.
I'm going to do holidays. It's a family feud. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's more personal. I'm pissed.
That's interesting.
It's more personal and you get more upset. I do that. Not that you go, you know what I mean? But like, there's a different level of valence. There's like the narcissism of small differences is that phrase. Like, I get the most mad at the most normal Republicans, if that makes sense. Like,
sure.
They know better. Like Marco and whoever, all the way down the line, the people that I knew personally,
right?
And I do think that in your creates a different like body response maybe than being mad at somebody that you think has been stupid and wrong the whole time.
That's so interesting because, Jon, I don't know about you, but my feeling is rage against fecklessness. That idea of, Kamala Harris wrote a book, 107 days. I only had 107 days. I couldn't put together a coherent governance plan. And you're like, well, it's been a year now. Like, does anyone over there have ChatGPT? Can you fucking just throw that in there? Like, hey, what's a good affirmative liberal case for economic? Like, what's your frustration?
It is with that. Maybe not primarily because I do think like you have to, Republicans and Republican politicians have agency and so do voters. Look, it's been 10 years of this. Mm-hmm. All of us are to blame. Like,
oh, you're in a dark hole, man. Yeah. You're in a dark hole.
But I know we all try to blame someone else, but it's like we all have a little stink on us here. Voters, media, Democrats, Republicans, but no, I find myself very frustrated with the Democratic Party and Democratic politicians because I can't believe we haven't fucking figured this out yet.
Right.
And that we are still making the same mistakes that we made, I don't know, in 2016 on. It's just like we haven't learned many lessons.
John, to that point you're making, he came down the escalator in 2015, and I remember being gleeful. I thought, well,
Same.
Oh my God, Yosemite Sam has just entered the race, a cartoon villain. I mean, who chooses the escalator, the least powerful mode of getting down? You might as well come down on a fire pole. And then he comes out and he's Mexicans or this and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh, this is just going to be a funny circus that we're all going to enjoy ourselves. And 10 years later, did you guys watch any of the rally last night?
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, I watched the whole thing.
Yeah. That's the lunch pail part of the job we were talking about earlier. I did a strong 14 minutes, I think. Was
Really?
what I could take. Yeah, maybe 16.
I'll tell you what jumped out to me. It felt a little bit like when you see a big star from 20 years ago playing a state fair.
Yeah.
Like where they go out there and like everybody's just kind of sitting there like, just fucking do achy breaky heart.
Yes. Yeah.
And let's go.
Yeah. His heart really wasn't in any of the affordability message that he was supposed to,
right?
Which he told us, which is always, you got to give him credit for that. He's like, my chief of staff is making me do this. And they're telling me not to call it a hoax, but it's a hoax. And let me show you all these charts. And he has all these charts up about inflation and the Biden administration. And no one really cares about the charts. And he's like, let's do one more chart since they're playing so well. And it's like, he is funny. It's a funny joke, but his heart's not in what voters actually care about or what most voters actually care about. His heart's in, going off on Ilhan Omar and Somalia and immigration stuff.
Yeah.
But that's also, if you notice for the audience, until he plays the hits.
Yeah. That's their watchtower right there. That's
right.
Somalia was the good stuff. I thought, and it was really gross and the good stuff for him, like working with the audience. Like, he did like 5 minutes on Ilhan Omar last night. And to me, I thought it was the most telling because it was the crowd response was probably the most into that.
It's the crudest.
Or maybe the fake 4 more years chant. And it's like, he needs a foe. Like that is the thing that he's good at. He was good at, making Hillary into a foe. He's good at making Harris and Biden into foes. He's good at going after elites. He's good at going after immigrants. It's tough for him on the economy because he doesn't have a foe, right? Like he tested out Jerome Powell. Whose fault it really is. It's this guy, Jerome Powell, over at the Fed
chairman.
My favorite image of the year, the two of them in hard hats.
Yeah. That didn't really land.
And he's like, you're over budget. And Powell looks at it and is like, that's a different project, you dumb fuck.
Yeah. Somalians are much more in line with the type of thing that his folks are going to respond to.
It's not just that his heart wasn't in it, though. It's that I think he has become even more out of touch in this second term and in the first year.
For sure.
Like, he's doing last night he was doing your kids don't need $37. Like, we're like 2 weeks out from Christmas,
Only 2 or 3. How's that going at your house?
It's the economy is the best it's ever been. You're all doing amazing. Make your children at Christmas cry.
And also, like, I just fired the architect for my new ballroom because he couldn't build it big enough or fast enough. So while
I'm gold enough.
Yeah, I'm sort of using gold leaf all over the White House, but $2 maximum.
$2, maybe 3.
Maybe 3.
So I'm going to throw out to the sadness. I'm going to inject a little bit of that MDMA in this thing. I'm going to throw a little bit of ecstasy into the room. The thing that it strikes me as, and the reason why I bring up sort of the state fair analogy, or that the vein of this that's so tapped into something deep and dark in the American spirit seems to be waning. That if you look at somebody in he's an authoritarian, right? He wants to run this thing. He wants us to be more like Russia and more like Orban and all those things. Generally, authoritarians in their first year are legitimately popular. That the things that I'm going to take care of the drug dealers and I'm going to kill and I'm going to deport the Somalis and all those things that are the trappings of kind of a more darker authoritarian thing usually play pretty well in the countries where they're deployed. He's not that popular. And is that the thing that maybe gives you a little bit of like, oh, wait a minute, maybe this lunch pail shit we're doing, maybe it's working, or maybe it's his own incoherence that's causing this.
Yeah, I think it's his own incoherence. I'll maybe take a half dose of the MDMA.
Hey, kids, this holiday season, you don't have to let big wireless and your overpriced phone bill suck the joy out of the holidays this year. You don't have to. You could. I don't know you. You could be Scrooge. You could be a bah humbug type of situation there. But right now, all of Mint Mobile's unlimited plans are 50% off. You get 3, 6 months, 12 months, unlimited premium wireless, $15 a month. You can bring your current phone and phone number over to Mint. No contracts, no nonsense. It could very much be the best deal of the year. It makes it real easy for you to give your expensive wireless bill the garbage treatment. That's what you could do. Throw it in the garbage. That's French, by the way, garbage. Turn your expensive wireless present into a huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint. Shop Mint Unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/TWS. That's mintmobile.com/TWS. Limited time offer. Upfront payments of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Over 35 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com.
Because I'm with you on him. He's made a lot of problems for himself. I think that the nativism and the kind of right-wing authoritarianism, I don't know that's going anywhere. I think you just
that holds its appeal.
Yeah, you got to hang around some young MAGA voters for any length of time, and you'll kind of see the trajectory we're on. That's still scary. But Trump himself, like the ability for him to control power, I look back at the year, and in some ways, I think about that inauguration picture with him with all of the tech billionaires.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe the seeds of his demise were really right there, right? Yep. Like, I do think that he has lost touch with, like, the types of people that came into his coalition late, who, like, really were pissed about inflation, who really were kind of pissed about the way the COVID governance happened. These kind of young men that we all talk about who, like, are more libertarian-ish, but they had economic concerns and they didn't like the establishment. And Trump ends up like ensconcing him and with like the richest people in the world and doing them favors and doing nothing to actually help regular people. And I think you're seeing the results of that and his numbers going down. Like, I don't know that he's lost like the core MAGA base, like people that are injecting Newsmax into their veins or have not turned on him yet. But like that layer of people, the manosphere types and Hispanic voters and other folks who like came in this last time, who voted for him the third time, but maybe didn't the first or second time. I think that he's really alienated them, and and it's hurting his political standing for sure.
Yeah, I think his political standing is probably weaker than it's been at any time in the last decade, save for, after he tried to foment an insurrection, the Capitol. Don't want to forget that.
It was pretty dicey there for about a couple weeks, about 2 weeks there.
I can't believe that's been reduced to some sort of subtextual footnote that, there was also that, if I remember correctly, there was when he tried to overthrow the government of the United States of America. Violently.
It was that. And then right behind it, concerns over inflation.
Yes. No, absolutely.
But so politically, he's rarely been weaker, but he's also never had more power than he does right now. And so my concern is that, so the good news is definitely, like, I'll take the full hit of MDMA.
All right,
this.
Bring it.
There you go, bud.
Getting some more water.
Let's hit the rave, man. Hit the rave.
I think the off-year election showed us that. I feel like relatively hopeful about the midterms because of this, but I do think that he and the people around him also are not going to let go of power easily. And he is going to, he has proven in the past that the more cornered he is, the more dangerous he is. And so if I'm looking ahead to next year and the year after, what I worry most about is that he lashes out and abuses his power in ways that are even more harmful and dangerous to the country as he gets weaker politically.
You think that as he's more cornered, it'll do it? Because I'm always struck by that juxtaposition that you're talking about. When you think about the shit that he's done, like, okay, January 6th, and there's no question that January 6th was the culmination of a 2-month strategy to overturn that election in any way possible that it could. Then there's I've got the Epstein files, the QAnon sort of power that surged through my campaign and got me to but I'm not doing that because I've done doodles of pubic hair with messages of and please don't tell anybody about all the girls we fuck. All those different things. And we line up all the unbelievably unprecedented through 250 years of attempted republic governance of a country, a historical consent to the governed experiment that we're trying, and we lay it all out there, and the uptake of it is always so I think we're going to do better in the midterms.
Yeah. And not even that good, actually. I don't know that we're going to take the Senate. We're going to do a little better in the midterms. Yeah. Maybe one house, not the other.
What has happened to our zeal, our revolutionary goals of have we been reduced to a guy overturning, a unitary executive overturning everything? And the best we can hope for is there's a swing district in Georgia that I think is really, I tell you, they're primed. If we just get a centrist in there, has he beaten us down?
I mean, the concern, and this is where I get annoyed with Democrats, is the concern I have is we are in a cycle where one party takes power and then they don't deliver in a way that solves people's concerns and alleviates their distrust in their government. And so then the party in power gets thrown out and then the other party comes back in. And that would be difficult enough for democracy if both parties were normal political parties. But we are playing a bit of Russian roulette with these parties because one of them wants an authoritarian takeover of the country, which is the one in power right now. And so for Democrats, there is a way to look at this like you just did, John, which is, okay, we can, he's going to be unpopular because he has not fixed people's chief concern, which is costs and inflation and affordability. And so based on that, we can maybe take back the House, maybe take back the Senate, but maybe not, right? And then hopefully eke out a victory in 2028, but only if we focus only on these, economic concerns that people have. Okay, that's fine, but that is continuing to put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound that we've had for a decade now. And if we don't have leaders who speak to the broader set of challenges that we have as a country and not just the ones that voters are saying that they care most about, which are important, but if we don't have that larger narrative and that larger vision, then we're going to end up right back here.
I want to say one thing about the revolutionary zeal. I think was your phrase, John, because
Please know, Tim, that I am very careless with my wording. So just know that whatever it is that I said, I take it back.
No, that's great. I'm right. We need revolutionary zeal.
Then that's what I meant.
Yeah, maybe maybe you can be the leader of the revolutionary zeal. I don't know, because here's my frustration with Democrats, which is we're in year 10 of this. And the last two successful political figures in this country, meaningfully successful, sorry to gas up Favreau right now, I really hate to do that, but is a guy who's named Barack Hussein Obama, who ran as the ocean should recede and the red states, and only the first black president, and we're not red, very grand ambitions,
audacity of hope.
Exactly. And then it's Donald Trump, who's a reality show host bigot, who's we're going to build the wall and arrest our opponents. Right? Neither of them were going at all by normal political playbook, and they tried something new. The establishment and conventional wisdom and the pundits mocked them, and they won success, including myself, in both cases, and they won overwhelmingly. And it's could we learn something from that? Could somebody try? I'm desperate for somebody to try something. Try something new. It might not land.
Right.
It might not be my preferred policies.
I've got someone for you, Tim.
Great center left, my former Republican radical. It might not be that, but what? And we just, and there's not a lot of trying out there, of giving people something to get excited about.
Right. I'm going to sing you a song, Tim. I didn't want to have to do this, but I'm going to sing you a song. Mamdani. Whoa.
Yeah, well, he was born in Uganda, unfortunately, so we've got limited cap on his ambitions.
But isn't that the thing you're talking about? So
Yeah, a little bit.
I think structurally we are more set up for what you guys are talking about now. So we are in a joint custody agreement now. It used to be sort of shared custody. Now it's a complete, a shared custody. Sometimes dad gets the country, sometimes mom gets the country, but there is no real interaction. It is not, what do they call it? A conscious uncoupling. This has been it's one of those divorces that has a lot of vituperative elements to it. But the structure is also set up now so that these pendulum swings that you guys are talking about, to go from Barack Hussein Obama to Donald Trump, is, we keep having those pendulum reactions to one another. Mm-hmm. But now those pendulum swings are set up to be, the gap between them is much more, especially if the Supreme Court grants the executive the ability to come in and just wipe out the entire government. Everybody that comes in there. So depending on which billionaires are the ones that are victorious in whatever they do there, aren't we set up actually not for the thing that we're all talking about, which is a healing candidate that brings an affirmative case that finds a way to break through this kind of attention economy fog that we've all lived in? Aren't we in for a little bit of a rougher cycle than that?
Maybe.
We certainly could be.
Yeah.
I was worried about this. Favreau's new friend, Ben Shapiro, he's been on multiple panels with him recently, but I was watching Ben, and he was like rationalizing Trump. I forget who he was in an interview with. It might have been, but he was rationalizing Trump by saying that he thinks we're going to go through the cycle you just laid out, Jon Stewart. He's like, we're going to have, kind of an authoritarian-ish right-wing person followed by an authoritarian-ish left-wing person. And if that's going to be the cycle, then I've got no choice but to sign up for the authoritarian-ish right-wing person. And I do think there are a lot of forces out there that are like incentivizing that dynamic. And so I worry about that. And that is like part of the reason why I'm like trying to, gently encourage opponents to Donald Trump to have some positive ambition, or else I think that we could end up there. And I don't want to. I didn't leave one authoritarian side to join up with another one.
Right. See, that's where Tim and I we disagreed a little bit, because I was more down with that.
You're down.
I was more down with not authoritarian necessarily. By the way, and I say this in no way to scare anybody except myself. There is a giant bee.
Oh.
And at first I thought, oh, look at that giant bee outside. And now he's on my phone. And I realized, oh, he's not outside and he's not healthy.
Is this a metaphor?
I wish it was. I think there is a giant.
Do you want to kill it?
Clearly unhealthy.
Or let it go? Or just,
I don't want to kill it.
Wish it away?
I want to find out what's wrong. I want to diagnose.
You want to help it.
I want to help this bee desperately. Not to derail anybody, but if you find me at any point while you're talking going, oh my God, that's why. And I apologize to Rob Vitola for blowing out the sound just now.
When the bee came in, I think you were saying that you wanted a left-wing Franco.
Yes.
You wanted kind of like a Democratic Franco to just shake things up.
Yeah, I mean, I say that sort of, facetiously. What I want is a Democrat who understands that government's role is partially to be a check against corporate power, not a lubricant for it. That when you have government does the shit corporations won't or can't do, like healthcare. So like when we talk about, Obamacare, or like setting up an insurance pool to all that, like I want government to understand the lesson that every other industrialized, sophisticated country understands. The market for healthcare is inevitably broken. It doesn't work. And therefore, you have to accept that, like they've all accepted. We're the only ones who haven't accepted it, and we see our costs skyrocket. So if a more robust executive can use the bully pulpit to push through what Jon was talking about earlier, a policy that could actually solve the problem that we're facing, rather than kind of just adding more liquidity to a system that we have that is already broken through the externalities that capitalism doesn't fix. Tim, does that sound dystopian to you?
Not dystopian, no.
But
I mean,
Tim,
we can hash out the details. I'd like to hear. I'd like to see your white paper, sir. No, that's right.
You do need a white paper for that.
Hey, folks, it's December. It snuck up on us, which means holiday time, which means I'm already late in terms of getting gifts. And I will be late, and then I'll get some sort of a gift card, and then it won't be used, and then I will feel shame. Only shame. But I got to tell you something. If you're looking for an actual gift, one that people will actually like, Aura frames. They're just digital picture frames, right? And you upload your photos and videos. You download the Aura app, you connect to the Wi-Fi, and then boom, you're sharing the photos and videos. It comes right from your phone. You can use it all year long. And by the way, this is for people who like their friends and family. For those of you who are misanthropic, this might actually not be the gift for you. But this is for people who are capable of love and happiness. You upload the photos of the frame before it ships. It's a perfect gift. It comes straight out of the box. You can use it. Every frame is packaged in a premium gift box. You don't even have to be embarrassed by your really, truly, let's be honest, subpar present wrapping abilities. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code TWS at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code TWS. This deal exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply.
Look, this is a choice that the next Democratic nominee and hopefully president is going to have to make, which is Donald Trump has taken a sledgehammer to whatever was left of government when he got there, and he has politicized everything. And Democrats, one style and one piece of advice has been, you got to fight, they don't play by the rules. Why should we play by the rules? And in some cases, I agree with that. I think that Democrats take the Senate, and we have a Democratic president. We should get rid of the filibuster immediately because there is going to be no other way to pass legislation where Democrats aren't getting 60 votes in the Senate, probably in the next decade more.
They could try. I'd like to throw that out there.
They can try.
You're saying they could try to get elected?
Trying to win some races in red states.
But honestly, it's going to be an uphill at this point to get to 51, right? Okay. And so we're going to need to get rid of the filibuster. On the other hand, it's like, okay, who's the next attorney general? Do we want someone who's going to go after all of the MAGA people like they went after Democrats? Or are we actually the party that believes in a government that works and that people can have faith in and trust in and believe isn't politicized? And so you're going to have someone like that. And then if you do that, then that gets a bunch of people really pissed off because now you're not fighting hard enough, right? So there are real choices for the next Democrat to make because of what Donald Trump has done. Do you get rid of all the people, all the crazies in the Trump administration? Yeah, I probably would. But what if he installs someone as Fed chair who's really bad, but now you're a Democratic president and you're going to fire the Fed chair and that's going to screw up the markets? Maybe you do that anyway. But I think we are underestimating right now the choices that the next set of Democratic candidates have to make in regard to what kind of country they want beyond
Tim's not having it.
No, I am having it. This is my kind of now.
Then I'm not having it. All right, then
This is my kind of hardball. My question is, Favs' optimism is showing isn't JD Vance or Donald Trump Jr. going to be in charge of the next Fed chair?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Democrats need to actually convince people and win,
right.
But this is nice.
Tim, I'm talking about these things will be hashed out in the campaign.
Oh, God.
Before you get, that's why I said Democratic candidate, right? This is going to be a conversation we're having in 27.
Maybe this, though, is kind of the viewpoint of it, which is, and I hear this a lot from the Democratic Party, is we've got to get rid of the filibuster or we've got to pack the Supreme Court. And what I don't hear a lot of is to what end?
Yeah.
Right.
So when they say we're going to get rid of the filibuster, I go, oh, great. What are you going to pass? I think we're going to pass an extension of subsidies to insurance companies that does not in any way address the broken healthcare and insurance market system. And then we're going to continue along with the kind of failed legislation that does not address in an agile way the needs of the people you purport to represent. And that's where this is my largest problem. And Tim, I'm so curious about you, though, because you're in this kind of, it starts out as a diaspora.
Yeah.
And I imagine that you begin to have more affection for sort of the Democratic side, not to suggest like a Stockholm syndrome,
course,
but it's sort of like, I don't know if you've seen Cheryl Hines on any interviews recently.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
She was like a dyed-in-the-wool liberal, all these different things. And now she's just like, MAGA opened their heart to me. And the liberals turned their backs on me. And you're like, right, because you're useful to them. You agree with them now.
Yeah.
So they embrace you. Look at the shit they're saying about other people. Like, for you, has the embrace of liberals changed you politically? Do you still feel the same kind of political mindset, or are you in a diaspora? Like, where are you?
Yeah, it's changed me some. Like anybody who's like Donald Trump getting elected twice did not change my ideology at all. I think that's a sign of a really small thinker. It's like, I don't know why in a society we have to be like, oh, the way to show that you're moral and true is to have the exact same views when you're 22 as when you're 82. Like, that is what a principled person does. So yeah, I've changed some. There are certain things in particular, like Republican things that I didn't care about that much, but I just like signed up for the team, on issues that like were not high priorities for me, that I'm like, you get a little time to think about them and you change your views. I'm way more open. I've been around way more rich people, and important people lately, and I'm way less impressed with them than I was when I was 22. And so like,
I can't believe you were ever impressed with them.
Yeah. I'm much more open to, extensive taxation of the wealthy than I was when I was convinced by the pull up myself up from the bootstrap stuff that I learned as a college Republican. So I've had some changes, but there's also stuff I think that you guys I'm sure agree with this. I haven't gone full native. The Democrats have not done a good job governing a lot of places where they're in charge of everything. So I'm not on board for everything the Democrats have done. I lived in San Francisco, or I lived in Oakland, but I lived in the Bay for a while.
Mm-hmm.
The Bay wasn't governed that great. And now they've got Lurie in, who's more of a center guy. And I think things are getting better. So I'm not on, Chicago's not being governed that great, right? I don't think that the National Guard should go in and that we should have the, jackbooted thugs menacing people, but I don't think the mayor of Chicago is doing a particularly great job, and I think Pritzker would have questions about that if he were to run for president. So, I've had some changes, and I think that, just going back to your Zohran point about how Democrats could think about this, Zohran's messaging is grand. And like the movement is grand, but the ambitions aren't that grand, right? It's like it's tangible stuff for people. It's free buses, it's rent control, it's we're going to cut some of the red tape so that the food truck guys can survive, the halal trucks, right? And so I'm fully on board with all of that. I think it would be a big risk for the Democrats to come in and say, we just listed out all the things that need changed. It's like, okay, well, we're going to put in the Swedish healthcare system. Sure, I would be fine. I'm fine with that. I have no love for this current healthcare system. I'm not going to go to the mattresses over that, but that's going to be a rocky transition,
Yeah,
and that might lead us right back into a MAGA 2032. And so I just mean that there's a lot of stuff to consider. It's complicated.
So Tim and I joke that our politics have sort of moved now so that we have the same politics. Like, I've moved towards Tim and he's moved towards me, and so we don't disagree on anything anymore.
That's a bad clip for you on TikTok.
I know. You know what? This is part of it.
When you run for governor in California.
Tim, this is part of it. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. But one way that I've sort of rethought my own priors on this is the delivering on the campaign promises is just as important as the boldness of the promises that you make. And so I do, when I think back to the 2020 primary on the Democratic side, on healthcare, to stay with that example, it was every single debate, every single time they all got on stage, they were debating the finer points of various Medicare for all proposals. And if you didn't have Bernie's, you had to explain why you were lesser than Bernie and why you weren't as committed to healthcare as Bernie was. Everyone on that stage knew, including Bernie probably, that you're never going to pass just a clean Medicare for all. some people had pretty bold plans that would be just light years better than we are right now. Thinking of like Pete Buttigieg was like Medicare for all who want it. So you have a Medicare program, you can have people choose into it, and then it slowly kills off the insurance system, right? That would be amazing. But so we're debating all this stuff. Joe Biden wins, and what do we get? We get an extension of the healthcare subsidies because that's all that passed, right? Now, what do you think that means?
And they also got to negotiate the price of 4 different drugs.
4 drugs, yeah, and the other ones are coming soon.
You won't believe it.
And so do you think, what do you think that does to all the voters who were thinking, oh, we had this big debate about healthcare and then we win in 2020, so there's going to be real change coming. I'm pretty excited about this. And I think the Mamdani point is instructive here, which is Mamdani's success is going to completely hinge on whether he delivers the promises that he made. That sounds obvious, but if he can't do free buses, if he can't freeze the rent, then it's not people's fears are oh, he's a, Muslim socialist who's going to, institute Sharia law. No, the real fear is that he just doesn't manage the city well and doesn't deliver on his promises. And so therefore it deepens cynicism and it makes people less likely to participate in politics. And so I do think that our ability to deliver on the promises we make has to be as important as the promises themselves. And so you need a path, a realistic path to get where you say you want to go. And
a coherence to it. I mean, one of the things that strikes me about this administration, I'd love for you guys to think about, is the utter incoherence. He's a wonderful announcement president. He makes great announcements. We're gonna cut drug prices by 1,000%. He never actually follows up on it. China is going to buy more of our farmer soybeans than in the history of soybeans. We may have to plow over Omaha to plant more soybeans because of how much China's going to buy. And then they don't. And then Caroline Leavitt goes out and says, under Biden, China didn't purchase any soybeans. Just a flat out fucking lie. They actually purchased more than they're purchasing now. Does coherence... There has to be a price for incoherence. There has to be a price for somebody who's going to get us in a war to stop drug trafficking while pardoning a guy who literally moved mountains of cocaine into America. Surely coherence has to be a part of this at some point. Surely. And stop calling me Shirley.
Surely? I don't know about surely.
I mean, I think he's paying the price for it right now in his approval ratings, and we saw it in the off-year elections. There is a price to it, but I think that the key is, and what's frustrating, is there's only a price to it when you are lying to people about something that they know you're lying about because they're experiencing it in their own lives, right? And so him going out there last night and being it's an A+++ economy and affordability is a hoax, that is going to hurt him with voters. It is hurting him with voters. On the other hand, when he says well, I'm getting the worst of the worst off the streets for immigrants, if you don't live in a community where ICE has been raiding the community and he's telling you that these immigrants, committed all these horrible crimes and now he's cleaning them up, it's more possible for you to believe that bullshit because you're not experiencing it in your own lives. So I do think that the economic trouble that he's facing is the thing he can't run from with just all of his usual bullshit.
Well, some of it too is sowing the seeds of our destruction. I mean, how do you make America stronger? By completely gutting our research capacity,
right?
In anything. So maybe these things don't pile up. Tim, what do you think is the thing that's going to start to create a sense? Because even when we say he's not that popular, I don't understand how he's even in the 30s, quite frankly.
Yeah, the research thing that makes me sad, I just want to say one sentence on that, because some of the stuff that's in the most destructive that he's done actually isn't going to matter at all. And that gets you into a dark place, into wanting to have some bourbon, because we won't even know. We won't ever really be able to say, right? Was it because of that cut that we weren't able to deal with this disease, that we weren't able to have this discovery that we could have had, right? And then on the USAID cuts on top of that, and all of the vulnerable people throughout the world who've died, and Cheryl Hines doesn't understand why liberals are mad at her.
Well, that was the most. Even I think it was Nicholas Kristof made a great point, which is. For all the MAGA people that are upset about Nigeria attacking Christians, nothing will kill more Christians in Africa than cutting off USAID. Yeah.
So that's sad.
Nothing. Yes.
But I don't think that will matter. To me, what has mattered, I spent a decent amount of time listening to MAGA adjacent media to try to see what's resonating. Mm-hmm. And for them, or listening to Marjorie Taylor Greene lately, like there was a genuine feeling like the America First thing really did resonate with people.
Sure.
And
as it has for 150 years.
Yeah. And there's some racist elements to that I deplore. But like this idea that the government doesn't care about us. It cares too much about the elites, cares too much about our foreign, adventurism and militarism. And I think that you think that Trump, as I mentioned before, with like having all the tech guys being his new BFFs, bombing people in Venezuela, blocking the Epstein files, caring more about his Peace Prize than he cares about the food bank lines in Kentucky. Like, I think that is his real vulnerability, that he seems to just be kind of just like any of the other elites that have let people down. And it would be for the Democrats to best capitalize that, they need to find a messenger who can, without the racist parts, speak to that, right? Like, speak to the fact that, like, I do care
but without
about your
the
suffering.
racist parts, where's the zhuzh?
Where's the yeah?
You got no zhuzh on that.
Yeah, it's not as fun.
It's John, when you think about sort of, because you guys live more in the world of these pundits. Tell me about the conversation that occurs not on television, where people, how many times does Marjorie Taylor Greene just recently say, "You won't believe what Republicans say about Donald Trump when they're not on television," or "You won't believe the things that they say to me." What is the conversation below the conversation?
Yeah, Fabs, what's Ben Shapiro saying to you in the green room when you guys are hanging out?
We're so tight now.
Because I've always said this: the real news is what people are talking about in the green room of the news network, not the sort of performative news that you see, being delivered every night. That's where the truth is.
Yeah. I mean, I think on the Democratic side, look, I try to keep, my whole goal is to narrow the gap between the on-mic conversations and the off-mic conversations. But honestly, on the Democratic side, the conversation is like, we don't have anyone for 2028. What are we going to do? Really? Like, no one, like, people can, this is why I'm trying to be honest about this. People can tell you that they're really impressed with one candidate or the other, or they think this one's going to win, or this one has a chance. But it's like, it's either something that you say in public to not piss everyone off, or it's something you tell yourself to make yourself feel better.
Right.
And like, you sort of get to the point where you're like, yeah, I could get on board with this one. I could maybe get on board. This could work.
So when Democrats say, "I'm so impressed by our deep bench," they're completely lying.
I think either to themselves or to other people. I will say I am not impressed with the deep bench.
Some people are definitely lying to themselves. I guess I had a very prominent Democratic strategist. I don't embarrass him, but like, he gave me the deep bench thing just like a month ago, and I was like, "What are you talking about?
Right.
Are you serious?" I was like, "Is this a bit?" And he's like, "No." So some of them have convinced themselves. And by the way, Trump could fuck everything up so bad that it doesn't matter.
It's a big bench. There's a lot of people on it.
Do you have a sense of with the Republicans, like when Marjorie Taylor Greene comes out now, nobody tells the truth until they decide not to run anymore. And even then, people are a little bit reticent. So when they talk about that, we can all relate it to kind of the emperor's new clothes. Like, is anyone ever going to say it when it still means something, that the emperor has no clothes? Or are we really sentenced to this sort of backroom conversation that is the real conversation? Like, I would love to know, and I know, Tim, you recently had a spat with Scott Jennings, but like, I would love to know in his quiet moments when the Demogorgons visit at night, like, what he really thinks about all this shit. Because certainly, like, Dan Bongino recently, now as the FBI deputy director, said, "Oh, all that conspiracy shit. Well, I was being paid.
Yeah.
I was being paid to lie to you and stir up discontent and trouble and all kinds of other incredibly negative emotions to undercut the authority of the United States government. But now that I'm in it, I just want to let you know, like, we're all good."
Yeah, I guess I'll just look. These guys don't talk to me as much as they did the first term. You'll be surprised to know. So I have like a somewhat limited vantage point. Our boy Scott Jennings, I think he's Vonnegut himself. I think he's become the person he pretended to be. So I don't know that he has quiet moments. To be honest, maybe he does, but I don't know. I think that what you're seeing though, like where you can kind of get a little peek into what's happening, is in the frustration from the House of Representatives members. It wasn't just MTG. Nancy Mace has spoken out about this recently. Lee Stefanik's running away, running for governor. A bunch of people are retiring. There's just another one from Texas today, and they all say they're all saying the same things. Like, we're not doing anything. I don't feel like we're accomplishing anything. And, they can't blame the person whose responsibility it is.
But what is it that Nancy Mace and Elise Stefanik thought they were going to accomplish? Like, they seem like just bomb throwers. I mean, at least Stefanik is a pretend, like, I think underneath all that is probably someone much more sober. But, like, what exactly is Nancy Mace frustrated about not accomplishing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think part of it was, when things were going well, I think that they were happy to do what you just said, right? It's like, oh, hey, look, we're going to drink liberal tears and go on Air Force One and go to the, parties at the White House and we're winners, so it doesn't matter. But but I think what's revealing about it is that Trump's poor political standing means it's not as fun anymore. And so they do want to be able to say, oh, hey, whatever it is, like the Epstein thing was a real break for them, on a variety of other issues. They want to be able to go home and say to people, I am like trying to deliver something for you economically. And instead they're not doing anything.
John, do you find Democrats, like during the Biden cycle, did you find a very similar thing where all of a sudden some Democrats were like, you don't understand? Because I didn't see much of that. None of them were, very few people were coming out and going like, yeah, I'm not sure this guy's up for a re-election campaign.
Yeah, look, there was anyone who was close to the White House was even privately spinning the same shit that you would hear in public, with like maybe taking it down a few notches, but like he's tired, he has his days, but he's good. I was in a meeting with the other day. He was so smart. It's very like participation trophy kind of thing. It's like,
it sounds like a parent teacher conference. You can't. Let me show you a picture. He drew this.
Remember Jill Biden after that debate when she came out on stage and was like, "Joe, you answered all the questions," and like everyone, it was.
Why are we doing this? You're traumatizing me.
I know. I can't. It's the year end.
All right. Sorry.
But anyway,
Sorry.
yeah, no. So you didn't. But people who weren't close to the White House, that was the same thing. Look, this happened, but this goes back to like 2016. If people who weren't close to the Clinton campaign were like, "Ooh, Hillary, not a great candidate, but like, you know what? Donald Trump is so bad that she's obviously has to win, and we just gotta get her there." And I cannot go into another presidential cycle where it's like, the person isn't the best, but like they've got to be better than JD Vance, and I think we can just get him there. I think it's just to compare him to JD Vance, and we'll get him there.
Right. You want something affirmative. If you're like me, and I'm assuming that you're not. I'm assuming you're taller and more than likely younger and more vibrant. But you're not a fan of the firing. You don't like firing people. So you know what you do? You find the right candidates in the first place. That saves you the problem there. Use Indeed. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and reach the exact people that you want faster. You could put the skills down that you want them to have. With Indeed sponsored jobs, you only pay for the results. Monthly subscriptions, long-term contracts. Sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. In the old days, what you had to do is you said to walk outside and yell, "Who wants a job?" This is so much really more efficient and pleasant. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results now with Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/weekly. Just go to Indeed.com/weekly right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/weekly. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it the right way with Indeed. Speaking of JD Vance, let's pivot for a second, because Donald Trump he's 79 years old. As much as he threatens we're going to change the Constitution, or there's a lot of things we're looking at, that talk is quieted somewhat based on popularity. And certainly JD Vance would be seen as most vice presidents are, the person that's going to inherit this. But I think most people look at JD Vance and go, doesn't have the magic. Like Donald Trump gets away with, there's a certain antibiotic resistant kind of being to Donald Trump. Shit doesn't stick to him. He's able to get away with saying the most horrible shit, and it doesn't seem to affect. That dude doesn't have it. And Rubio doesn't have it. So they're going to be back to, okay, now we're stuck with Pat Buchanan's platform, but without Trump's ability to somehow put gold leaf on it and make people not see it.
I'm with you on that, Hobium. I don't. Maybe we can compete on this and have some sort of competition. I don't know that there's anybody that has more disdain for JD Vance than me. Like, I find him utterly contemptible.
I'm up there.
If you ask me, name
you guys really do agree on everything.
Yeah, name somebody in public life, your entire life, that you like less than JD Vance, and it's literally like mass murder. You know what I mean? Epstein.
Really?
You know what I mean? Like, it's hard
Miller.
to find
I think
somebody.
Stephen Miller's up there for
Stephen
me.
Miller. Okay,
Right.
so I hate Vance more. So anyway, with that big wind-up, he's a learner. Like, I think it's a little bit of hopium to just be like
Shapeshifter.
Yeah, he's a shapeshifter and he's good at it. Like, I think about him on Theo Von's podcast, the Manosphere guy from here in Louisiana, and he did fine, actually. I mean, like, it wasn't my cup of tea, but like they did some cocaine jokes. Like, he seemed he didn't seem scary, and I could see how he could, kind of learn how to adapt and appeal in a way that's better than he is now.
But he would have to soften Stephen
sure.
Miller is only able to be there because Donald Trump dilutes the poison.
Sure.
Yes.
Right.
There may be no difference or distance between what they actually believe, but you can't feed that shit. I truly believe this. I'm not one of those people who believes that America at its heart. I think this nativist era we're living through is antithetical to our actual country's spirit and being. Like, I really do. I don't think people dig this. And Miller's poison has to be filtered. And Trump is the perfect vessel to be able to do that. You take that away, and when people get a real taste of this shit, I don't know. Maybe I'm being naive.
No, I think there's some truth to that, but I don't think I will agree with Tim again. I don't know that I think Vance is he's definitely not as good as a vessel as Donald Trump for Stephen Miller's bullshit, but he can code switch in a different way than Donald Trump, which is he has been part of the elite circles in media and the never Trumper worlds that we all have been swimming in for the last decade. And so think about him with against Tim Walz in that debate.
He won.
Like, that was a nicer, more respectful JD Vance. And the way he makes the argument for nativism is not as, let's say, exciting as Donald Trump, but it is more cohesive and intellectualized in a way that is targeted to people who, like, when he talks about, there was this quote, he was trying to explain himself the other day where he's like, should you really, what's wrong with not wanting your neighbors to speak English so you can, if you go over for a cup of sugar, you can ask them in English. And when they don't speak English, like, that's okay that they don't speak English, but really, do you want a whole town like that of people who don't speak your language, right? And it's like, he's like, I think it's bullshit. I laugh at it, but like, I think he is more adept at speaking to sort of the nativist strains in Americans than we might think. And I worry about that because that coalition after Trump is going to be more ideological.
That's what I mean.
Because Trump, this is more personalistic right now because it's all about Trump. The post-Trump coalition will be more ideological, more dangerous, I think, in many ways.
Right.
And so, but maybe politically weaker.
Tucker would embody that much more cleanly.
Yes, you're right.
Than,
I agree
than
with
JD Vance. He would be much more
and he's more entertaining. He's more genuinely, I can't believe I'm saying this, but funnier than JD Vance. Like, JD Vance does have a stiffness to him that I don't think Tucker has.
Tucker might be believing his own bullshit now, though. I was a little more scared of Tucker a year or two ago, but I think Tucker might have seriously had a psychotic break. At some level, Donald Trump knows it's an act, right? Like, remember he made fun of Mike Pence for being too religious, and he makes fun of Stephen Miller being I don't know if we'd want what this guy. We don't want to know what's in his head.
He knows that it's a lot.
And Tucker might, I think, have had an actual psychotic break.
He may now be along. I tell you, the moment for me, and I've been a fan of his for many years.
Long time, yeah.
Oh yeah.
For a long time. For me, my break, obviously, with subscribing to Carlson.com or whatever it is that they do there, was when he said he was attacked by a demon and scratched. And I was like, that's weird. And then he told the story. He's like, so I'm asleep with my 4 hunting dogs and I wake up with 4 scratches, because I was fighting a demon. And I'm like, look, I'm not, obviously, I don't want to be like Occam's razor here, but, there is a possibility. I have dogs. I sleep with them. And I do wake up occasionally with markings. My first thought isn't demon. It's Toby. Toby, what did you do? Toby, why would you scratch me?
Maybe that shows you're out of touch. Maybe the demon. Maybe you should be thinking of demon, John.
Yeah. No, I think the problem that he'll have is, again, there's too much of a shapeshifter element. The whole thing about Trump was authenticity. If your career was I'm the bow tie wearing Buckley, and now I'm the Marlboro man who fights off demons, like that's a hard pill for Americans, I think, to swallow.
Yeah, but we don't have long memories.
I'm going to throw one out there for you. There's only one person within that coalition who has that sort of magic that Trump has and the kind of like, I don't give a fuck devotion. And that's RFK. He's the only one that possesses that. And I would think can do the most pull-ups out of any of those motherfuckers.
Too weird.
The voice.
Voice, I'll give you. I think I don't think too weird. I think that's part of the mythology that gives him it's like saying like Donald Trump never would have been it. I mean, look at his house. He shits in a gold toilet. Nobody's going to buy that.
But the problem with Trump that we missed is it was like, oh, he's too offensive. He's too offensive. No one is going to do that. It's RFK's problem is not that he's too offensive. It's like the whale carcass and the.
Nah, I think you're falling for sort of, and you're falling for monology rather than like that's become the butt of a joke. Like, oh, he's got a worm in his brain and a bear carcass, and I don't think that is in any.
He's going to be 75. Are we ever going to have a candidate again that's not 1,000 years old?
He can't be outsider shaking up the system anymore. And like, if you're a weirdo, but like, you're going to go in there and you're going to shake some things up. Like he's going to have run HHS for 4 years and he'll have a record.
But his people don't view him as weirdo. What I'm trying to say is his people view him as a like heroic Hercules standing against the tides of institutions that are designed to kill Americans. Like there's a mythology around that guy that none of the other ones have.
Yeah, but he'll have to answer for, did you do anything to those institutions over the last 4 years? Did you save us?
Will he? Does anyone have to answer for anything anymore? Isn't that the lesson of the Trump administration?
No. The lesson is that when you're out of power, it's easy to just throw rocks at the institutions. But once you're in power, then people get pissed at you, and then they throw you out and they put someone else in.
I'm intrigued.
That's the only thing I would say.
No. Under his breath, I heard something under his breath. Let me hear. More.
I'm intrigued. I think Bobby versus Stewart.
Bobby versus Stewart.
He wants to do it. Obviously, I think if you'd read the Olivia Nitze book, like she's very honest about that. Did
you guys see yesterday? Cheryl says no. Cheryl says he's not running in 2028 no matter what.
Oh, and she's been very predictive, hasn't she, over these last?
Yeah, she doesn't seem to be running the show.
He's never gonna. I mean, endorsing Trump, that's a bridge too far. And then
he'd never stray from our marriage.
No, that's
the voice, though, is really, I think, the saving grace.
That may be a political reality for Americans that make it harder. In your, let's sort of try and wrap up. Is the way to change the results we're getting from our government, do we have to change the incentive structure around what wins? Because the thing I noticed in Washington is it runs on a different currency than what its purported kind of ideal is. It's sort of like the Washington Post. Remember the Washington Post put up on their masthead, democracy dies in darkness. But meanwhile, in the Washington Post boardroom, they had a list of articles and how many clicks it got, and they were running on a different currency. It feels like the political system and the media, which I sort of liken to America's immune system, right? If those two things are corrupted, and I think they are, we don't get the results that build a healthier environment. Do we need to change the incentive structures on media, on social media, on governance? They're not rewarded down there in the same way that you think they are. Does that sound fair to you guys?
I think that, yes, I think you do need to change the incentive structures for sure. But then the question is, how do you change the incentive structures? And I think the way to change, or the best chance of changing the incentive structures, is to have someone who wins, who doesn't follow those incentive structures and proves to everyone else that you can run a different way and win. This is you're going back to Obama wins, Donald Trump wins, and they won based on campaigns that people would have guessed before they ran would not have been successful. And so I do think it still comes back to, in my opinion, you need a person willing to, like a leader willing to sort of go outside the box and sort of swim against those tides and show people, see, all this stuff that you think you need to win is actually bullshit, and you can win by doing, something different.
Yeah, I look, Trump has revealed that like the structural, architecture of our government and society is a lot weaker than we thought it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm totally with you.
I am pointing and thumbs upping Tim right now.
And so I think that like a successful candidate potentially in the future would run on just a just total reform of how to do things, right? Like, and really like not just kind of a marginal change, like really, and in ways that would make people uncomfortable, in ways that probably make me uncomfortable. I think that's probably right. The thing that I struggle with on this though, John, is like I go a little bit back and forth. Like, I think that's obviously true if you look at Trump. The other thing though, I think that's obviously true that's in conflict with that is that like our society has went through so many worse times than the 2016 to 2024, just like putting Trump aside, like economic, like people's experience living through,
except for the pandemic, I think that's probably
true.
The pandemic had historical echoes to it.
It did,
in a way
for
that
sure.
most things
But
don't.
I mean, look, we went through, like, look at how black folks were treated throughout the entire history of the country up through the Civil Rights Act. They didn't like turn to, their stupidest, like I got stupid authoritarian like black nationalist to try to overthrow the government. I just like
2 weeks of wearing a mask in Massachusetts and guys stormed it with assault rifles.
Right, exactly.
And I'm sure black people were like, oh.
And so to me, you think about that, and it's like something else is happening too, right? It's like, yeah, people are struggling. I don't want to, like, I'm trying to minimize anybody's struggles. I just mean like looking at a historical lens, like what we're going through now does not seem to match like the level of rage and the political reaction to what people are going through. And why is that? And like the phone is really the answer to that, I think. And so then like, how do you deal with that? Is that fixable? Right. Is that not fixable? Is that a generational thing where it's our kids will be able to manage that better than we are? I don't know the answer to that. But like that to me is the other element of this.
No, I've said that I think for a while, which is the catastrophizing that occurs when you live online, because the incentive structure of social media and all those things is to, the weaponization. Like, again, I hate to go back to the Bongino thing, but like he basically said it. Like my job was to make you feel like shit is completely falling apart and we are in an existential crisis. Now my job is to try and hold things together so I can tell you what's actually going on. And it's actually not that bad. And you almost, it's that part of it. Right. It's like, so oopsie poopsie, but AI is going to make that worse. And what have we done to that rather than, again, show the government as maybe the only powerful enough check against that power? We've invited them into the henhouse.
Yeah. And I don't think anyone is speaking thoughtfully about AI and how we're going to handle it on the Democratic side at all. Like even the social media stuff, it's to some extent we're now fighting the last war on that because people are moving, even off social media towards their chatbots who they're going to be friends with. But like the way we talk about this like, is it really the phones? But it's the way humans interact with one another, right? And if the way that we interact with each other, get information from each other, debate with each other has fundamentally shifted, then of course our politics is going to change dramatically. And I think that if AI continues to push us further, it could divide us further. It could make us lonelier. It could make us, we have these chatbots that are obsequious and they're going to just flatter us the whole time and tell us everything we want to hear.
Or drive vulnerable kids to suicide. I mean, literally drive them to suicide.
Yep. And what are we going to do? We're charging ahead so that like the 10 people that run these companies can become like trillionaires and not just billionaires.
Maybe we'll have a benevolent AI president. That's what Sam Altman said. The AI is going to poll everyone, see what everybody wants, and then do what everybody wants. Problem solved. What the hell are we needed for?
And none of that will ever get weaponized by the Mercers to try and figure out exactly. See, that's the problem. All these technologies are being weaponized. I think I used to think like, it's going to be, it used to be like communism versus capitalism or democracy or, those various things. Then I thought it was woke versus unwoke. That was going to be the new schism. I actually think Trump's onto something different, which is the sort of stable world order that we had that was based on kind of shared liberal or democratic values. He does not in any way value. He thinks that's for pussies. His mindset seems to be the 5 families. Russia is the Gambinos. We got China over there is, whoever that family is. And we're going to divide up turf.
Yeah. It's very great powers.
Yeah, we're North Jersey.
It's, what it is? It's, if you ever watched Thomas Shelby and, do you remember that show? Peaky Blinders.
Oh.
He had a theory of power called big fuck small. And that's what strikes me as, so I think this next election, what we're really going to be fighting over is the world order going to be the 5 families dividing up the spoils, or are we going to try and go back to a more stable liberal thing? But I don't think that can be the explicit battle.
Right.
The Democrats can't make this about, we don't want to go to a spoil system. We want to go back to, they've got to address real people's concerns. Is that sound fair to you guys again?
Yeah, I mean, what they are selling, what's behind that sort of 5 families style of leadership is it's zero-sum politics, right? It's domestic as well. This is Trump's view, which is if you win, someone else loses, and so it's might makes right, and it's survival of the fittest, and that's why I like the people with power, and I like the people with wealth, and everyone else is a sucker. And so
we're not losers. We're the hottest country in the world.
We're not losers. If you're the right person and you have enough strength and you have enough power, then you can get whatever you want and take whatever you want, and everyone else fend for themselves. And that's why I respect Putin. That's why I respect Xi, and I respect all these people who are tough.
He only respects people that don't have to face elections or real elections.
And I think that the argument we have to make is that this is not like politics isn't zero sum, that there can be winners and winners, and that like we can grow the economy in a way that benefits everyone. We can have a government that benefits everyone.
But that can't be the argument. The argument has to be explicitly like childcare doesn't work, healthcare doesn't work, education doesn't work, and here are the ways that we have to do it.
And we have to actually deliver.
Well, yeah, and I would just say, look, like the spoils system, my argument to them against it is less that he pitched you that the spoils were going to come to you. That was the point of the spoils system.
Mm-hmm.
And like that these liberal democratic pussies, as John put it, cared more about what was happening in the Netherlands and, and Rwanda. And I don't. I want the spoils system to help you. But we saw what happens with the spoils system, actually. The spoils system helped Trump. The spoils were for Trump and his family and their crypto money. And we need an alternative vision to that, right? Like, what is the counter vision to that is not like the League of Nations? You know what I mean? Like, people don't care about that stuff. I do.
Which is why the corruption message comes in addition to what you're saying, John, which is like, yes, childcare, healthcare, all the things people want, but you have to talk to people about why they're not getting it and haven't been getting it. And Trump is giving a perfect example of that now.
The difficulty with the corruption message is in the nuance of it.
Yes.
Because I think Tim said it earlier, which I thought was a really great point, which is Trump has found the ways to do this. He's made the corruption that we all suspected were in our society explicit. But it's a hard argument to make. You know, you look at 1789 Capital, or you look at, Jared Kushner is now going to finance the buying of CNN and hand it to the president so that he can kill it in front of us.
Yeah.
Or
hand it to the Qataris and the Saudis.
Or give it to the Saudis. Donald Trump Jr. is suddenly now the head of a drone company or on the board that has like a $500 million contract. The problem is Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma. And you may say, but the order of magnitude is different. And you're right. But it speaks to the same thing, that proximity to privilege is what matters. It's how kleptocracies and those things work. And so I think if the Democrats try and make it again a moral corruption argument, there's enough whiffs and notes and heady hints of Teapot Dome and Tammany Hall in their backgrounds that it's a hard argument to make.
But that's why the message can't be they're corrupt and we're not, so elect us because we're better and trust us.
But that is always what they do. They run on this weird moral black and white.
I know. But back to what we were saying earlier, that's why you need an actual reform agenda. Like, I am willing to change the institutions. I'm willing to change the incentive structure. I'm willing to get money out of politics.
A new deal for against corruption, a new deal to tap into. Inequality occurs because we value capital and not labor. There's got to be a way to tap it. Tim is a socialist now. I see it on his face.
Yeah.
He is so excited about this new plan.
Yeah, you can definitely sell me on just painful levels of taxation for the AI CEOs. You can get like I will flank Elizabeth Warren on the left on.
But you can't. Here's when you can't sell taxation, Tim. You can't, because the Democrats haven't proven that people will get value for that extra money. The message of we need to get rid of the filibuster or we need to tax billionaires means nothing if nobody ties it to fair value. They have to be more remedial than that. They have to step back forward. Now, you can frame it two different ways. The first thing is, the first commercial Democrats should run is Trump said he was for you. He said Democrats are for they, them, and he's for you. And that works if you're Ghislaine Maxwell, if you're the Qataris, if you're that should be every ad is showing who you is.
Yep.
But on the Democratic side, if they can't prove the taxpayers get value for their dollar, they are fucked no matter what they think of.
See, this is where we're becoming more centrist, John. We're moving towards Tim.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Exactly.
What just happened?
Yeah, no more welfare, welfare reform. Okay, we're gonna have high taxation, socialism, and welfare reform, and cutting red tape so we can build things for once.
This is our abundance agenda. We're gonna get rid of the regulations. Yeah,
we can do that, but value doesn't mean not, because first of all, it's not welfare. It's not an entitlement. It's an investment. Yeah. If we invest in oil companies to go drilling somewhere, how the fuck can you not invest in human beings getting enough food and getting enough shelter to be their best selves? These are investments. That's value.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're done here.
Oh,
Gentlemen,
I need to see the white paper still.
You're probably right. Any moment from this year that you would like to highlight on your way out to go to your respective media empires? Anything that strikes you as
the one that for me that was both, because I think it represents the year, which is simultaneously it's like the dark comedy. Like, it's really like heartbreakingly horrible, but also just clownish, was when Terry Moran was interviewing Trump in the Oval Office, and they're asking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and Trump's team to like prove that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was MS-13, had done like the MS Paint, like the font. It was like Arial 12 font that they put on top of his hands, and it's MS-13.
Yes,
and Trump says to Terry Moran, he's like, "What? You're crazy. Like, obviously it was MS-13. It said it on his fingers." And Terry's like, that was Photoshop. And he's like, no, it wasn't. And then Terry's like, I guess we're gonna have to agree to disagree. And Trump won't let it go. Like, Terry's trying to let him off the hook, and Trump's like, give me the picture. That was it for me.
That's a beautiful one, John.
It's funny. I was gonna do I was going to do, well, Kilmer Abrego Garcia, this is a little darker, but I mean, the fact that when I knew that like this was much darker than even I had expected, the fact that the United States government in court admitted that they mistakenly sent someone to a torture chamber, and then their response to that was not bring him back. It wasn't even, okay, well, get him out of there and send him somewhere else. It's, we're now going to ruin this guy's life and make this a big cause on our side that we are going to punish this guy no matter what, just because. And that is how they dealt with the whole deportation regime since then. And it is they are delighting in violence and wanting us to know that they delight in the violence and the abuse.
Right.
And I think it's that sadism.
The memes.
The memes and how they try to make it like a joke, but funny, like the desensitizing people to violence and abuse and sort of dehumanizing people is, I think, the sort of the underlying, the real poison of the last year, and something that's going to take a lot more to get out of the system than just a few better policies.
That's so interesting. And it's the dehumanization as a virtue.
Yes.
The idea that is the virtuous way. And it really is. They make a virtue of the ignorance of a lack of discernment. And the thing that I think always comes to you is we're not actually safer when our government can't tell the difference between MS-13 and an 18-year-old valedictorian who's lived here from Honduras since she was 7, but got the same treatment and sent to some facility in Louisiana. That's the thing that I think maybe also has to be brought to bear to the American people is our ignorance doesn't make us safer. Yep. It doesn't make us America first. That discernment is the first quality you need in building a better state of understanding individuals and not groups. Gentlemen, I so appreciate you taking the time. I know you guys are awful busy. Tim Miller from the Bulwark and Jon Favreau from Pod Save America. And obviously you will be consolidated when the Ellisons buy you. And I think by the way, I think it's a great move on their part.
We're not selling.
That was for the moment for me, and this is probably selfish, is when Donald Trump is like, I'll choose who gets Warner Brothers. And you're like, is that where we are? Like literally the president of the United States.
Now make me another Rush Hour. I want Rush Hour 4, 5, and 6.
I want Rush Hours and you can have it. Guys, thank you so much. Have a wonderful Christmas, holiday, Hanukkah, New Year's. And I look forward to seeing all the good stuff you do in the next year.
You too, John. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
I'll be honest with you. They seemed like worn down.
Yeah.
At first, I think they started to gather that vigor again to go back into battle. But they definitely, I had a feeling of like, it's fucking December.
Yes.
And I want to buy presents for my family and my friends. But like, this is an incessant grinding.
Yeah. This year has felt a million years long, as you said at the top, but you also weren't introducing such fun ideas like RFK is going to inherit the earth, you know?
You're saying that it actually, I was not in any way bringing optimism and.
I mean, maybe you tried, but I don't
You
think.
are the problem.
I definitely didn't leave the conversation feeling optimistic, but I wouldn't expect that for a conversation recapping 2025.
Yeah, look at our outfits. We all spontaneously wore black.
Oh God, I didn't recognize that. Can I say maybe I'm insane, but I remain optimistic. I honestly think the despicable nature of this administration is the effect that it's having on those two. That is not the effect that it has on political operatives. That is the effect that it has on human beings that don't want to live in this acid-based. This is not like it's Mars. We don't want to have to wear spacesuits to breathe freely amongst our people.
Yeah, people are sick of the shit, I think.
Sick of this shit. And they're starting to realize he's the band leader. Trump is the band leader. Shit. Optimism.
There you go. We did it.
Jillian's so not buying this, by the way.
No, I think that you're right. And I want it to be true as much as I think it's true.
All right.
Well, for real optimism, we'll have a new mayor.
And listen, man, which presents opportunity like we haven't had in a very long time. And each one of the these moments presents opportunity to get some fresh water into this brackish cesspool that we've been swimming in, and we'll get out of it. And it's the end of the year. Obviously, we want to give our listeners a chance to pop in a couple of questions there. Brittany, what do we got from
All right. They are versatile.
any of these kids?
So here we go.
They are versatile. This is our last podcast of the year, by the way. That's why I'm talking like that. All right.
Jon, in your opinion, what is the best and worst thing that Trump did this year?
Oh, God. Best and worst?
Yes, sir.
I mean, holy shit. Really? I mean, obviously, like, for me, the worst thing is it's creating clouds of humanity that are not individuals. They're just a patina, generally shaded, that he feels are inferior to his, I think he truly believes in those kind of hierarchies, and he believes that his people are at the top of the hierarchy, and take this for however you think it, but that the lower castes are disposable. They're not individuals. They're not particularly on the same level of humanity that he is on. There is no individuality. A Somali doctor has nothing against a Swedish petty larcenist. Like, a Somali doctor is worse because he's in that cloud and therefore can be treated in the manner that his administration is treating him. And that's by far, I think, the worst thing. It's not an individual thing that he's doing. The best thing he did was accept a trophy from the World Cup that literally looks like zombies reaching out of the grave to tickle the underside of his balls. It's fucking crazy.
Yes.
But all right, what's next? Hopefully this one will perk us up a little bit.
I doubt it.
Oh boy. End of year. People are hurting, man.
We'll get there. Jon, Trump has stated that he believes it's seditious, perhaps even treasonous, for the press to report on his health. Care to comment on his health?
First of all, I think he's doing great health-wise. I think he looks great. I have found, and again, I'm obviously not like an orthopedist, but I've found that the thicker the ankle, the better the balance.
That is that famous saying.
For old people, falling is really, but if you get those, if your ankles are tree trunks, you can't get knocked over, you can't break the hip, and that's generally the beginning of the downward slide. So I would suggest that in and of itself would give you confidence that this may be the healthiest, most robust president that we've ever had in the history of the United States of America.
Ankle circumference alone, yeah.
But it once again gets to the point of, for Donald Trump, the level of fealty can never rise to a level that is satisfactory to him. There is no level of ass kissing that you can do. I mean, when you watch his, everything is seditious that falls beneath the level of, my God, sir, thank you for not allowing too many hurricanes to hit the United States, as Kristi Noem did in that stupid cabinet meeting that they had. He is angry at Fox News, which is literally like a 24-hour-a-day ball washing machine for Trump and is designed specifically to keep him in power. So for him to say something is seditious and treasonous means nothing, because the bar of entry to Donald Trump is purely about how deeply you are proving your undying loyalty to the king. Anything below that, obviously, is seditious. And none of us measure up, unfortunately.
Sad.
It is sad.
Aw.
And I hate it because, it's so hard to be a billionaire president.
Oh, I know. I mean, I don't know, but sure.
But you can imagine, money corrupts and power corrupts. And to have all the money and all the power, it's like if Lord of the Rings ended where, they're going to drop the ring into the fire, and then instead of hitting the fire, he catches it.
Spoiler.
Think of how hard that is on someone. We don't feel bad enough for him.
That's why he's so sleepy.
That's right. All right. What's next?
All right, next. Do you think it's possible for Trump and Jimmy Kimmel to end their feud, or is it too far gone at this point?
First of all, Jimmy Kimmel might be the most generous, kind-hearted individual that I have met in my entire life. He is someone, he doesn't even sleep. Like in the middle of the night, he will just sit and Google like ideas for what the best thoughtful gift might be for you that he could send to you in a moment when you're feeling low. Like that dude is all heart, like all of it. Like he is a naturally generous, gregarious, warm individual that people are drawn to, and he is drawn to people. I wish I could be more like him. I am a kind of introvert, loner type personality that like, I love people over there. He brings them into an embrace in a manner. So if anybody could do it, it would be him. He is the antithesis of everything that guy stands for. And he has been, and his family has been put to the ringer for no apparent reason. Donald Trump could say, everybody's mean to me. And you're like, because you're the fucking president. And you have an army and nuclear weapons.
Yeah, it's kind of part of the job.
Right.
And he's also mean, so.
Yeah. But you've drawn fire on him and his family because he said shit about you didn't like. Tough shit.
Learn to take a fucking joke.
Boom.
I would love
damn.
a president that could take a joke and stay awake through a meeting. Two things. Like, I don't ask for a lot.
When was the last time this country had that? I think it might have been Eisenhower. No. I just hate that. He's honestly like one of the best human individuals underneath the scenes, behind the scenes, whatever, that you will ever see in your entire fucking life. Colbert too, by the way. I'm very fortunate that those people in my life who understand my eccentricity, but also warmly embrace me at the same time. I'm very lucky to have folks like that in my life. Absolutely.
Something to be grateful for in the holiday season.
Brittany.
Yeah, this is a good optimistic note.
Brittany, you just put a bow on that. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Last but not least, Jon, do you think Christmas should be more about Santa Claus or the baby Jesus?
Oh God, this is not in my jurisdiction. I don't know. Well, I've got some explaining to do to the people at home. I don't know if you can tell by, let's say, my face, but I would be more comfortable answering any question about Fiddler on the Roof. I can give you the ins and outs of the show Yentl, but as far as this, I'm assuming that Christmas has, other than the birth of Jesus being the tent post, the rest of it doesn't appear to be about that in any way, shape, or form. You guys might know better than me, but
it's giving presents.
Yeah, it should be more about Santa.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Like I don't ever go like on November 19th. Oh my God, the Jesus commercials are starting so early this year. Like it doesn't seem to have a whole lot to do with that. But I will tell you this, as someone who never experienced it when I was younger, when my kids were younger and they still believed in all that, it was the most fun holiday I have ever experienced. When they still believed in magic. Brittany, do you recall when you believed? Like, did your family?
Oh, very much so.
It's kind of magical.
Yes, my mom actually. One of my favorite memories is I was 11 years old, and my mom sat me down and she goes, "You know Santa?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, it's me."
She wanted the credit.
I was like,
That's awesome.
devastated.
I love that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that like we were always talking about, like, when are they going to figure this out? Because we knew it wasn't going to come from us. They would be like, so Katie told me.
Yes.
And it is your entree into the world of lies. Like it is your, And then your entire worldview is like, wait a minute, there's no Santa. And I think the president might be corrupt. Like the jump from there and the way that you parent your kids up to that point, and then after that point, is so like before that, it's all a certain like magical morality tale. You know, it's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice. Sharing is caring. Like it's all that. And like as soon as that other thing hits, it's a lot of like, there's fentanyl and cocaine. Remember that. Like everything fucking changes very quickly. All right. Well, this is our last podcast of the year. As we said, we're back January 14th. So it's a nice, long, beautiful, and you guys have earned it. In the new year, obviously we're publishing podcasts on Wednesday instead of Thursday. That's just something that you can lie down there. And this end of the year is a nice time to remind everybody that all the work that is done on this podcast, that hopefully you find yourself enjoying, is done by the people that I'm talking to now, or that you are not seeing, but they are behind the scenes, and they put in the diligent work that allows me to feel prepared and ready to talk to anybody. And I mean anybody. They're throwing me the creators of AI and political pundits and all these other things, and I just I love it. I love being able to just talk to people that I find interesting and fascinating and pick their brains and learn. There is nothing better in this entire fucking world than learning something you didn't know yesterday. And it's just something I really appreciate. And I really appreciate you guys for obviously doing the hard work that allows me to do those sorts of things. Oh, Brittany, how do they get a hold of us?
Twitter, we are Weekly Show Pod. Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Blue Sky, we are Weekly Show Podcast. And you can like, subscribe, and comment on our YouTube channel, The Weekly Show with Jon Stewart.
Our lead producer is Lauren Walker, producer Brittany Mehmetovic, producer Jillian Spear, video editor and engineer Rob Vitolo, who has to sit back there when I see a bee and go, oh, that's going to suck in edit. Audio editor and engineer Nicole Boyce, who also has to deal with that. Rob actually more has to deal with just how much of the Knicks picture I'm going to show and how pale I'm going to look. Nicole is the one actually who has to turn down. I guess it's the gain.
Very good, John.
I don't really know what it is when I shriek like a scared girl. And our executive producers, Chris McShane and Katie Gray, who keep the whole ship running. Thank you guys so much for all of it. And thank you guys for in any way listening or watching this. We really do appreciate your support. And we will see you guys next year. Bye-bye. The Weekly Show with Jon Stewart is a Comedy Central podcast. It's produced by Paramount Audio and Busboy Productions.